A sitting U.S. cabinet member posted a bold claim on social media about American military power in the Persian Gulf. Within hours, the Pentagon publicly contradicted him, and the post was quietly deleted. That alone should tell you something important about where this conflict actually stands. Because what's unfolding right now between the United States and Iran isn't just a military operation. It's a collision of bad intelligence, political miscalculation, and a war that nobody in Washington seems to know how to end. And if you're watching from Europe, this matters to you directly because every single escalation in the Strait of Hormuz sends shockwaves straight into your energy bills, your fuel prices, and your economy. Hit subscribe right now if you want the truth without the corporate filter. We cover what they won't every single day. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we expose the next major story. Do it now. Let me walk you through what's actually happening, because the gap between what officials are saying and what's really going on has never been wider. It started with a tweet. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright posted a statement claiming that for the first time, the American military had successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. He framed it as a milestone, a show of strength, proof that the U.S. was restoring safe passage through one of the most critical choke points in global energy. The post gained massive traction online, was shared tens of thousands of times, and was picked up by several outlets. There was just one problem. According to the Pentagon's own spokesperson, it didn't happen. No escort took place. No tanker was accompanied by U.S. naval forces. The Department of Defense flatly denied the claim, and within a few hours, the tweet disappeared from Wright's account without explanation. Now, you might look at that and think it's just a miscommunication between agencies, but a former U.S. national security advisor went further. Speaking publicly, he suggested that the administration may be deliberately manipulating oil markets. His exact concern, and I want to be precise here, was that contradictory statements from senior officials were causing oil prices to swing dramatically within the same trading day. Prices spiked in the morning on war fears, then reversed direction after optimistic statements from Washington. According to his analysis, this pattern wasn't accidental. Whether or not you agree with that assessment, the pattern is documented. And for Europeans paying record energy costs, these swings aren't abstract. They hit household budgets in real time, but what happened next makes the deleted tweet look like a footnote. According to a report published by the Wall Street Journal, Iran has successfully planted mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Fewer than 10 devices, according to the report, but enough to reshape the entire calculus of this conflict. Here's why that matters. The U.S. military had previously stated on multiple occasions that it intercepted Iranian mining attempts. According to official U.S. statements, American forces destroyed 13 vessels carrying mines toward the strait. President Trump himself announced that U.S. forces struck boats operated by Iran's Revolutionary Guard that were en route to lay mines in Hormuz. So the message from Washington was clear: we stopped them, except they didn't stop all of them. If the Wall Street Journal's reporting is accurate, and this is a publication with a long track record of credible defense sourcing, then Iran managed to get mines into the water despite American interdiction efforts. That's not just a tactical failure. That's an intelligence gap. It means U.S. surveillance and reconnaissance assets in the region did not have full visibility on Revolutionary Guard movements. And for a military operation that was supposed to demonstrate overwhelming dominance, that's a significant admission. Now, here's where it gets stranger. According to the same Wall Street Journal report, Iran is currently the only country successfully exporting oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Let that sink in for a moment. The country that mined the strait, the country that has been firing on commercial shipping, is the only one getting its oil out. The report states that Iranian tankers have been navigating the strait because they have access to the mine charts. They know where the devices are so they can avoid them. Every other nation's commercial vessels are either stuck, rerouted, or refusing to transit. Meanwhile, according to the journal's reporting, Iran has exported at least 7 tankers of crude oil since the conflict began, and Chinese buyers have actually increased the price they're paying for Iranian crude because supply from other Gulf states has been disrupted. So Iran is making more money from oil now than it was before the war started. According to the report, this is directly because Iran is the only exporter still operating through the strait. You'd think the obvious response would be for the U.S. to intercept those Iranian tankers, but Washington hasn't done that, and the reasoning reveals a deep contradiction at the heart of American strategy. According to multiple analysts and confirmed by statements from U.S. officials, every barrel of oil that reaches the global market, even Iranian oil, helps keep world prices from spiraling further. The U.S. needs oil flowing to prevent an economic crisis at home and among its allies. So even though Iran is the adversary in this conflict, Washington is tolerating Iranian oil exports because blocking them would spike prices even higher. For European consumers already dealing with inflation and energy insecurity, this is the kind of paradox that defines the entire war. And there's another fracture emerging, one that could reshape how this conflict ends. According to reporting from Axios, the United States has asked Israel to stop targeting Iranian oil refineries and fuel storage facilities. This is a notable development. Israeli strikes had already hit approximately 30 fuel storage tanks inside Iran, according to a CNN correspondent report, creating a massive cloud of toxic black smoke over Tehran. But Washington apparently told Jerusalem to pull back from energy targets. The U.S. Secretary of Defense went on record stating that American forces have not struck Iranian fuel infrastructure, and that doing so was not part of the U.S. campaign objectives. He specifically distinguished American targeting priorities from Israeli ones. This matters because it reveals a widening gap between what the U.S. wants from this war and what Israel wants. According to multiple reports, including analysis published in the Washington Post and the Financial Times, Israeli military leadership is pushing for a total dismantling of Iran's military and political infrastructure. According to these reports, Prime Minister Netanyahu sees this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity, one that may never come again because no future American president is likely to support an operation of this scale against Iran. Israel has reportedly allocated a historic defense budget specifically for this campaign, signaling its intention to sustain operations for an extended period. The U.S., on the other hand, wants out. American military planners reportedly warned before the campaign began that the air operation could not be sustained beyond 10 days without degrading weapon stockpiles and exhausting high V-value target lists. According to the New York Times, senior commanders told the president directly that prolonging the air campaign past that window would reduce its effectiveness and strain operational capacity. We are now past that window, and Iran has noticed. According to assessments cited by U.S. military officials and reported in the New York Times, Iran has entered what analysts are calling Phase 2 of its response. In the first days of the conflict, Iranian forces launched large volleys of missiles and drones, many of which were intercepted or missed their targets. But that approach has changed. According to U.S. military sources, Iran's daily missile launch rate has dropped by approximately 90%, and drone launches are down by about 80%. But the strikes that are happening are far more precise. According to these reports, Iran has shifted to targeting what U.S. commanders describe as soft targets and high-value vulnerabilities. These include facilities housing American military officers, bases with less robust air defense coverage, and logistical nodes. The result, according to U.S. military statements, has been significant. 7 American service members have been killed, and 140 have been wounded since the conflict began. Of those wounded, 108 reportedly returned to duty. but the casualty figures represent a level of sustained loss that the U.S. military has not experienced in a regional conflict in years. This shift in Iranian tactics is significant because it suggests something U.S. planners may have underestimated. Iran is learning and adapting in real time. But Iran's capabilities have also taken real damage, and it's important to be honest about that. According to reports, U.S. and Israeli strikes have degraded Iran's radar networks and surveillance infrastructure. A Saudi oil tanker reportedly transited the Strait of Hormuz without being targeted by Iranian forces, which multiple analysts interpreted as a sign that Iran's ability to detect and track vessels in the strait has been significantly reduced. This is likely one of the reasons Iran turned to mining the waterway. If you can't see every ship, you can still threaten every ship by putting explosives in the water. There's also the question of outside support. According to statements from U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff, Russia has communicated to Washington that it is not sharing intelligence on American military assets with Iran. Whether that's fully accurate is difficult to verify independently, but multiple analysts have noted a pattern suggesting that Russian intelligence support to Tehran has decreased since the conflict began. The reasoning, according to several foreign policy analysts, is that President Putin does not want to jeopardize his relationship with Trump, particularly as negotiations over Ukraine remain active. Putin reportedly believes Trump is sympathetic to Russia's position on Ukraine and is unwilling to risk that diplomatic leverage by being caught directly supporting Iran's war effort. This reduction in external intelligence support, combined with the degradation of Iran's own surveillance systems, explains why Iranian strikes have become fewer but more targeted. Iran appears to be relying on pre-war intelligence, hitting fixed installations and known positions rather than tracking mobile assets in real time. But here's what makes all of this even more consequential. According to a report from CNN, the United States is actively considering a ground operation inside Iran. Not a raid, not a special forces insertion, a conventional ground deployment aimed at securing Iran's nuclear facilities and extracting enriched uranium. According to the New York Times, Iran currently possesses enough uranium enriched to 60% purity to potentially produce 11 nuclear weapons, if further enriched to 90%. The U.S. assessment, according to these reports, is that this material cannot be neutralized through airstrikes alone. It would require forces on the ground to physically secure the sites, bring in technical specialists, and either extract or neutralize the material. According to CNN's reporting, this would not be a small operation. Military planners have indicated it would require full infantry divisions, not just airborne units like the 82nd, but large-scale ground forces capable of holding territory in a hostile environment. And this is where the casualty figures become critically relevant. If the U.S. is already sustaining significant losses from standoff strikes, a ground campaign inside Iranian territory would represent an exponentially greater risk. Iran would be fighting on home soil with knowledge of the terrain, prepositioned defenses, and the ability to wage an asymmetric campaign against American ground forces. The Iranian government appears to understand this dynamic. According to a statement from Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, claims that Iran has only 128 missile launch platforms remaining are inaccurate, suggesting that Iran's actual arsenal is larger than U.S. intelligence estimates. Whether that's true or strategic bluffing is impossible to confirm from open sources, but it aligns with a broader pattern. U.S. intelligence assessments of Iran's capabilities before this conflict appear to have been incomplete. According to the New York Times report, one of the key miscalculations was the assumption that this war would mirror the 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran earlier in the year. In that previous exchange, oil prices spiked briefly, then dropped. Iran didn't strike Gulf states, and the situation de-escalated quickly. According to the Times, President Trump referenced that experience directly in pre-war planning meetings, arguing that Iran would respond similarly this time. Several commanders reportedly accepted that logic. But according to U.S. military assessments now being shared with media, the more accurate comparison is the U.S. campaign against Houthi forces in Yemen, where months of strikes and over $1 billion in expenditure failed to achieve stated objectives. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is now intercepting ballistic missiles aimed at Prince Sultan Air Base and drones targeting its eastern provinces, according to official statements from the Saudi Ministry of Defense. Iran has escalated from drone-only harassment to ballistic missile strikes against Saudi territory, a significant threshold crossing that suggests Tehran is willing to widen the conflict even as its resources diminish. For European audiences, the implications are direct and unavoidable. Every mine in the Strait of Hormuz restricts global oil supply. Every escalation between Iran and Gulf states threatens the energy infrastructure that Europe depends on. Every week this war continues without a clear exit strategy increases the risk of a broader economic disruption that would be felt from London to Berlin to Rome. According to former CENTCOM Commander Douglas Macgregor, there is no quick resolution in sight. His assessment is that neither side is willing to make the concessions necessary for a ceasefire. Iran views its continued resistance as a matter of national survival and domestic legitimacy. The U.S. is locked into objectives, particularly around Iran's nuclear program, that cannot be achieved without sustained military pressure or a ground campaign that carries enormous risk. What we're watching is not a war that's winding down. It's a war that's transforming from an air campaign into a potential ground conflict, from a short, sharp strike into a grinding war of attrition. And the distance between what officials say publicly and what's actually unfolding on the ground and at sea is growing wider by the day. Every claim in this video is sourced from published reporting by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, the Washington Post, the Financial Times, and Axios. Every source is linked in the description below. Zero speculation has been presented as fact. If this kind of breakdown helps you make sense of what's actually happening, subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is far from over and the next development could change everything.